A merchant in medieval Venice is about to lose everything. He has one ship, one cargo hold full of silk, spices, and glass, one route across the Mediterranean, and somewhere out there, waiting, is a storm he can't see yet. He doesn't know it, but merchants like him are about to learn a lesson so important that it will outlive their names, their cities, even their language. It will survive as 8 words. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. You've heard it 1,000 times. You've probably said it to a friend without thinking twice. But that sentence isn't just advice. It's a survival manual, written in code, passed down for centuries. And it's not alone. Hidden inside the proverbs your grandmother used to say are some of the sharpest business principles ever discovered. Nobody built them in a boardroom. Nobody tested them in a spreadsheet. They were built the hard way, through bankruptcy, through famine, through trial, error, and the kind of loss that teaches you something you never forget. Today, we're going to dig them up. Let's go back to that merchant for a second. Picture the Venetian docks in the 1300s. Salt air, shouting traders, ships stacked with goods bound for Constantinople, Alexandria, the ports of North Africa. Venice didn't grow rich by accident. It grew rich because its traders were terrified. Terrified of storms, terrified of pirates, terrified of a single bad decision wiping out a family's entire fortune in one afternoon. So they invented a strategy. Instead of loading all their goods onto one ship, merchants began splitting their cargo across several vessels, sailing different routes, arriving at different times. If one ship sank, the family didn't go under. They lost a basket, not all their eggs. This wasn't a proverb yet. It was just common sense, soaked in grief. The kind of lesson that only exists because enough people learned it the hard way first. Centuries later, it would show up again, wearing a suit and tie. Economists would call it diversification. Wall Street would build entire careers on it. But it's the same idea a Venetian sailor could have explained to you over a cup of wine. Spread the risk, because the sea doesn't care how much you need this shipment to arrive. Here's where it gets interesting. Proverbs like this didn't spread because a king ordered people to memorize them. They spread because they worked. Language itself did the testing. Bad advice fades. Nobody repeats a saying that gets them killed or ruined. But good advice? Good advice gets whispered from parent to child, market to market, generation to generation, sharpening itself along the way like a stone smoothed by a river. Which means every surviving proverb has already passed a test that most modern business books never do. It's been tried by millions of people across centuries, in real conditions, with real consequences. That's not folklore. That's the largest, longest-running experiment in human decision-making ever conducted. And we've been walking past the results our entire lives. Let's talk about another one. A stitch in time saves 9. Simple, right? Fix the small tear now, or deal with a much bigger one later. But that sentence is describing something specific. The mathematics of compounding neglect. Textile workers in pre-industrial Europe understood this instinctively. A single loose thread, ignored, doesn't stay a single loose thread. Under stress, it multiplies. The fabric gives way at its weakest point first, and then it spreads, thread by thread, until what could have been fixed in seconds now requires 9 times the effort. Sound familiar? It should. It's the same principle behind preventive maintenance in modern manufacturing. It's the same principle behind fixing a small customer complaint before it becomes a public review. It's the same principle behind a single unresolved disagreement in a partnership that quietly festers until the whole company can't function. Different centuries, different industries, same thread, same tear, same 9 stitches you didn't want to pay for. But not every proverb is about caution. Some are about timing, and nothing tests timing quite like farming. Make hay while the sun shines. To a modern ear, that sounds like a gentle nudge toward productivity. To a medieval farmer, it was closer to a matter of life or death. Hay had to be cut, dried, and stored while the weather cooperated. Wait too long, and rain would rot the crop in the field. There was no insurance, no backup harvest, no second chance until next year. So farmers learned to read the sky obsessively and to move the instant conditions were right, even if it meant working through exhaustion. In that world wasn't a metaphor. It had a shelf life you could measure in hours, which is exactly what modern founders discover the first time a market window opens and closes before their product is ready. The sun doesn't wait for you to feel prepared. It just moves. Now here's where the story takes a turn, because not every old saying survives with its meaning intact. Some proverbs get twisted over time into something almost the opposite of what they originally meant. Take the early bird catches the worm. We use it to praise hustle. Wake up early, move first, win. But look closer at the phrase, and there's a second character standing quietly behind it. The worm. The one who didn't move fast enough. The original wisdom wasn't just be fast. It was be aware that speed has victims. And today, it might be you. That's a very different lesson. It's not a cheerleading chant. It's a warning about complacency. Which means for centuries, we've been repeating half a proverb and calling it motivation. The full lesson is sharper. Don't just move first. Move first or become someone else's opportunity. There's one more piece to this puzzle, and it might be the most important. Proverbs aren't just individual lessons. They're a system. Because the wisdom that built Venice's shipping trade only works if you also know when to stop diversifying and commit. Don't put all your eggs in one basket is true, but so is he who chases two rabbits, catches neither. Split your risk too far, and you're not a strategist anymore. You're just scattered. The old world didn't hand people a single rule to follow blindly. It handed them a library of competing truths and trusted them to know which one applied to which moment. That's the part modern advice often gets wrong. We want the one hack, the one rule, the one quote that solves everything. But the merchants, farmers, and tradespeople who built these sayings knew something we've half forgotten. Wisdom isn't a single instruction. It's judgment, built from a whole collection of hard-won observations, applied to a specific situation at a specific time. So why does any of this matter now, in a world of quarterly earnings calls and venture capital and algorithms that move money in microseconds? Because the tools have changed. The pressure hasn't. Every founder terrified of putting too much into one client is living out the Venetian merchant's fear in a different costume. Every manager who ignores a small team conflict until it explodes is relearning the stitch that could have saved 9. Every entrepreneur who freezes while a market opportunity closes is standing in the same field as a farmer watching storm clouds roll in. We didn't invent new problems. We just gave them new names, better technology, and a lot more zeros on the balance sheet. The eggs are different, the basket is the same. Maybe that's the real lesson hiding underneath all of this. Business isn't as new as it feels. Behind every modern strategy, there's usually someone from centuries ago who already learned it, lost something learning it, and turned the loss into a sentence short enough for a child to remember. We call it common sense now, but common sense had to be earned. Somebody paid for it first. So the next time you hear an old saying and think, everyone knows that, remember this. Everyone knows it because someone, somewhere, didn't, and they made sure the rest of us wouldn't have to lose the same thing twice.